On April the 11th, I made a post regarding a statement that was posted in the group Jews versus Hebrew Israelites Let's Debate by Clubhouse Discussion by Ahrayah the Seer. It states, the 14th day at evening is not the 15th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, nor the 9th day in the evening is the beginning of the 10th day, in regarding Yom Kippurim, our Day of Atonement. This discussion in the clubhouse was made after Ahrayah the Seer made a visit in the live chat by the Sons of Thunder Israelites in their Passover preparation discussion. And so I'm going to share that discussion, and I would like to clarify some of the misconceptions that possibly Ahrayah the Seer may have in his presentation. I'll be back.
Is it not big enough for everybody? Our first month began on March 21st. So this is the 14th day of our first month. We keep our months by the moon. Okay? So our new moon first month was March 21st. Our Passover is 14 days later, evening to evenings from that. So that'll be April 3rd. That's how we calculated that. So the Lord said on the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. Okay? That's why we're going to be keeping the Passover on that day. It'll become the 14th day at even. This takes us into the very next verse. Read on.
Verse 6. And on the 15th day, and on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Unto the Lord, 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread.
That's right. That's right, man. Read it again.
verse 6. On the 15th day of the same month.
On the what?
On the 15th day of the same month.
Go ahead.
Is the Feast of the Unleavened Bread.
So on the 15th day of the same month, that's the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Right.
But you got to ask yourself, what is the 14th day at even? You got to ask yourself. Go to Luke 22 real quick and one. Well, first you got to prove how the 14th day at even is the 15th day. Okay, you want to go through it? Yes. Let's do it. So we're going to tell you how we calculate the 14th day at even, what day that is. And we're going to stay in the same chapter. You know how to teach it? Bring it out. Let's go to 31. Come, read that.
It's the book of Leviticus, chapter 23. And I'm going to start at verse, it started at 27,
27.
Right? Verse 27. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month.
Now listen good. The 10th day of the 7th month, read.
There shall be a day of atonement.
Uh-huh.
It shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
Right, we're talking about the Day of Atonement, read.
And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is the day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Lord your God.
Come on.
For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted on this same day, he shall be cut off from among his people.
Right. So if you don't keep the Day of Atonement, you're going to be cut off from your people. But remember, we're in the 10th day. We're gonna get up to it, read.
And whatsoever soul it be that doeth any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people.
Read.
Ye shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute for forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
Verse 32 is the point. Read.
It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest.
Come on.
And ye shall afflict your souls.
On what day?
In the 9th day.
On the what day?
In the 9th day.
So on the 9th day of what?
Of the month, even at Slakia. On the 9th day of the month at even.
At when?
At even.
The ninth day of the month at even, which would be your 10th day.
See?
So that's why you're keeping the Day of Atonement throughout the day on the 10th day, but it starts on the 9th day at evening. Why? Because that is the 10th day. So that's how we calculate the days, because when does the day start in the Hebrew calendar? At even. So if it's the 9th day at even, we're going into the 10th day. That 9th day is already over at even.
Hey,
that makes sense.
You can't get around that.
No.
For the brothers that don't believe in the evening to evening, that's the beginning of a Hebrew day, you can't deal with that. You have no explanation for that. It's called the Day of Atonement.
Yeah.
But it starts on the 9th day at even.
Yeah.
What shall we say then?
That's it.
All right. Let's go back to Leviticus 23:5.
Leviticus 23:5. And the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread.
Bring it out. Explain.
Want to break it down?
Yeah.
So let's go to Luke 22 and 1, right?
This is the book of Luke, chapter 22 and verse 1.
So now verse 6 was talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? The 14th day at evening, but that's the 15th day, right? So that's why SOT, we do the Passover ceremony the 14th day at evening, which is technically the 15th day, right? So that's why we do the Feast of Unleavened, the Feast of Passover, and then the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts that same day, and we're going to prove it precept upon precept. Read what you got.
This is the book of Luke, chapter 22 and verse 1.
What does it say?
Now the Feast of Unleavened Bread drew nigh.
The Feast of Unleavened Bread drew nigh, which is what?
Which is called the Passover.
Now, why is the Feast of Unleavened Bread called the Passover?
It's what it says.
Read it again for me.
This is the book of Luke, chapter 22 and verse 1.
Come on.
Now the Feast of Unleavened Bread drew nigh.
The Feast of Unleavened Bread drew nigh, which is what?
Which is called the Passover.
Now, which is called the Passover. That's why the 14th day at evening starts your Passover and your Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Right.
According to the Old Testament and the New.
And
They agree.
Right.
And you got to make, and the scriptures got to be harmonious, man. They agree. That's easy to be understood.
I like it.
Go ahead.
This account is taught. This is account is taught by Paul, which is a doctor of the law.
Yeah.
This is we read from Luke.
Shalom, everybody. Check this out. Let me get right to it, man, because I don't understand why my brothers are making this grave mistake. And all they got to do is read
This is from the
chapters that
clubhouse.
they love to go to prove that the day starts in the evening. And they always run to the Day of Atonement because what they want to do is just harp on that word day, right? And just say that, oh, well, the Day of Atonement is from evening to evening. Well, all they got to do is read Leviticus chapter 23. And this will prove that the 14th day at evening is not the 15th day, nor is the 9th day at evening the beginning of the 10th day. This is your problem. So this is why y'all count is off. This is why y'all move y'all calendars back every 3 years. Y'all push y'all moon back a whole 30 days because y'all don't even know how to go through the scriptures and properly show people why y'all do that. So I'm about to show you and help you to clear up all this nonsense. These brothers are lying. The 14th day of evening is not the 15th day. Leviticus 23, the same chapter they go to show you that about unleavened bread. Verse 4, it says, "These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. And the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover." Okay. And then in verse 5 it says, and then verse 6 it says, "And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. And in the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work, no servile work therein, but ye shall offer offering made by fire to the Lord 7 days. But in the 7th day is a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein." So how is from verse 6 on down to verse 8 the same as verse 5? When we see that clear, it's clear, bro, it's clear that the 15th day of the first month is the first day of unleavened bread. But you cut yourself when you go to Leviticus 23 and you don't even read the whole chapter. You go straight to Day of Atonement because you think you got something. No. Hold on. Let's go back. Start at verse 5. Verse 5 says, it separates the 14th day at even from the 15th day. Well, it don't even say the 15th day at even. But you're saying that the 14th day at even starts the 15th day. Well, why is it separate here? So when was the commandment for the children of Israel that when they were in Egypt, that the setting of the sun, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their homes for 7 days at the evening, at the going down of the sun, when they killed the lamb, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their house and have that for 7 days at that period. Where's the commandment for them to do that then? You're saying that they're supposed to start unleavened bread at the same time, that they're supposed to kill the Passover and eat the Passover that night. But wait a minute. So it don't make sense. So this is what I'm saying. Bro, I don't know. I've kind of felt like that was said because I popped up on the YouTube, and I think it was just kind of like, oh, it's weird, but my thing is this, man. Brothers is lying, and they need to stop lying, man. They need to stop lying on the scripture, man. I don't even understand why they doing that. They like the brother just went straight to Leviticus 23:32. Went straight to the Day of Atonement, but didn't go and read about the 14th day of the first month at even in verse 5 and in verse 6 and on the 15th day, how it's clearly separate, how they're clearly separated. And then he could have went to Exodus 12 and went to the commandment and showed the clear separation. But no, then he went straight to the New Testament. And this is the error that I be telling them. And I knew niggas was going to use this New Testament to push their doctrine of idiocy further to say, well, look, unleavened bread for 7 days, and and then they're gonna say that the Passover is unleavened bread, and they're gonna use that New Testament. Oh man, it's I don't know, man. Just thinking about it just kind of gave me another headache, man. I'm tired of these niggas, man. I'm about to start throwing my Bible at these niggas, man.
Well, you shouldn't be throwing your Bibles at them because I think you frustrated yourself on purpose. And not for a response to Hebrew Israelites to subscribe to Christianity or to the New Testament, which we don't at all. But it's interesting that I found both of those discussions interesting. And I had to follow up on this clubhouse discussion. And it was quite interesting to me. And the reason why I found it interesting is that after several times of listening to it, I first had a misconception of him at first, or at least the beginning of the conversation. In the beginning, it sounded like that he was in agreement with the day ending at evening and the preceding day is at its beginning. This definitely have to be dissected through through Jewish sources, and many of that going to come from the Halachot Ben Ish Chai. Some will come from the Mishneh Torah, and some of the sources that I'm going to be citing will also, a few, not many, but maybe 2 to 3 biblical commentary from Christian sources to support the calculation of days through Jewish sources. And this is the only way that we will be able to get a understanding of what this discussion will lead. Let me first give thanks to High Source Rhythms for their provision of music for this intro. And please subscribe and hit the like icon and notification bell to be informed of my new uploaded videos from Respond to Hebrew Israelites, Jews versus Hebrews versus Take Two. Let me first thank High Source Rhythms for their provisions for the music for my intro. And please subscribe and hit the like icon and notification bell to be informed of my new uploaded videos from a response to Hebrew Israelites, Jews versus Hebrew Israelites, Let's Debate. Also, thank you, Iron Lion, for posting the clubhouse discussion in the group of Jews versus Hebrew Israelites, Let's Debate. Also for their support in providing me with the resources after I shared this discussion from the clubhouse about Ahrayah the Seer. Thank you all for providing that for this topic. And all the sources used, I will post them in the description under this video. What can I say? Well, I found both of the videos fascinating. I had to follow up on the discussion of the clubhouse, seeing that Ahrayah the Seer made mention that he was in the YouTube live chat, and I wanted to follow his discussion properly. And so I looked up Sons of Thunder Israelites. I looked them up. And I didn't know the title of their video, and neither did the clubhouse discussion mention the title of the video. But seeing that it was in the season of Pesach, I went to their page and looked under their videos, and I found it, question and answering. So I listened to it, and wow, okay, so far. But I wanted to make sure that he was in there. And as the discussion of Luke took place in the live feed, he was in there. And so from there, okay, that confirms it. He was there. And so after listening to their discussion in making preparations for Pesach, the verses that was used is pretty much what Jews adhere to, with the exception of the New Testament. How we observe our holidays, our holy days. So it confirms it. I mean, there is no argument about that. I mean, many Jews, Hebrews, Israelites, Messianic Jews, Messianic Christians, I mean, Seventh-day Adventists, all observe our Jewish way of honoring our holy holidays. Now, with the discussion in the clubhouse, there was a lot wrong with that. You and I heard it. There was a lot wrong with that. And that's why I played the first one first. There was a lot wrong with that. After listening to it for several times, I was a little bit in conflict with myself regarding what is it that he actually believes. Do he believe that the Eve is the beginning of another day? And what is his argument? Now, many of the verses that he was reading and quoting from, he may not fully understood them. I don't know. The discussion could be, could be had further, and especially in the comment section. Or I'll prepare to make another one. of the video. Maybe it wasn't explained properly because he did mention that. If there's something that you are doing and you end up indoctrinating your congregants to do it, and then somehow you end up doing something else without any explanation to it, then, what is wrong here? So I do understand that part. But there was a lot wrong in that clubhouse discussion. And I'm going to try to highlight some of those. And I may try, while using Jewish sources, read some of these passages, בעברית, but I will see how my mood is.
So when was the commandment for the children of Israel that when they were in Egypt, that the setting of the sun, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their homes for 7 days at the evening, at the going down of the sun, when they killed the lamb, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their house and have that for 7 days at that period? Where's the commandment for them to do that then?
Let me start here in Exodus 12. See if I can bring some clarity to that. Exodus 12:2. החודש הזה לכם ראש חודשים, ראשון הוא לכם לחודשי השנה. This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It should be the first of the months of the year for you. הדברו אל עדת ישראל לאמור, בעשור על החודש הזה, ויהיו עליכם איש עשה לבית אבות, עשה לבית. Speak unto the congregation of Israel, and say to them that on the 10th of this month, each of them shall take a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household. I find this interesting that it says, Be'asur lahodesh, the 10th of the month, instead of recognizing it or identifying it as the 10th day, as we will see later in this reading. وَيَمْ يَمْعَاتِ هَبَيِّت اِمِتِيوت اِمِسَي وَلَكَات הוא ושכנו הקרוב אל ביתו במקצת נפשות איש לפי אכלו ותכוסו על השה. But if the household is too small for a lamb, let it share one with a neighbor who dwells nearby in proportion to the number of persons. You shall contribute for the lamb according to what each household will eat. Now, I want to go back to verses 3, when it says that they are to get a lamb and hold it on the 10th and safeguard it. Now, for communities that do practice buying a whole a live lamb at its age and slaughtering it for the purpose of slaughtering it for Pesach, there's an error in that. One, no temple, and second, any offering made outside the temple is considered idolatry, and certain portions of any given sacrifice has to be tithed properly. But there's a lot of ramifications when I read further. But this holding of the lamb on the 10th and keeping it or safeguarding it is interesting, that we hold it until the time of slaughtering it. And the purpose of holding this lamb on the 10th is for examination purposes. Examine the lamb, as it reads further, that your lamb shall be without blemish, a yearling male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goat. The watching and examining it is derived from this expression. So I'll read down to 6. You should watch over it until the 14th day of this month, and all the assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. והיה לכם למשמרת עד 14 יום לחודש הזה, ושחטו אותו כקהל עדת ישראל בין הארבעים. You should keep watch over it until the 14th day of this month, and all the assembled congregation of the Israelites are to take it and slaughter it. Bain ha'arbayim, at twilight. Now, it's interesting also. Seeing as it appears to me that there were some misunderstanding on how Jews calculate the day and how our Torah calculate the day. And I'm wondering if there was a conflict somewhere in the discussion about how the days are calculated. Is it a misunderstanding of pretty much the 6 words that I mentioned in Bereshit chapter 1 verses 3 through 6, which I will read later. But I want to touch on the halachot dealing with this. They should take some of the blood and put on the 2 doorposts and the lintels of the houses in which they are to eat it. They shall eat the flesh that same night. They shall eat it roasted over fire with unleavened bread with bitter herbs. Is this lamb that is to be roasted is to be eaten with the unleavened bread and bitter herbs? These are questions that he had regarding Pesach and Hagamatzot. Are they the same, and are they observed together as one? Well, we keep this in mind. 12:8 of Exodus. They shall eat the flesh that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or cook any in any water, but roast it, head, legs, and entrails over the fire whole. You should not leave any of it until the morning. This is interesting. Walo totiru emimenu alboker. This is interesting. Alboker. Because I want to get back to that, which we saw, well, which I read. Two interesting clarifications on calculating our days. And no, I'm not going to share them right now, but I will, because I will highlight them when I get to it. This is how you shall eat it. Verses 11. This is how you shall eat it. Loins gird on your body, your sandals on your feet, your staff in hand, and you shall eat it in hurry. And it is a Passover offering. For that night I will go through the land of Egypt and strike down every male firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human and beast. I will mete out punishment to all the gods of Egypt. Here I'm going to go down to verse 15. The Shevad Yamin Matzot to Cheloach Bayom Harishon Tashbitu Seor. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. This is the time to remove the hametz out of your homes. Tashbitu. Tashbitu Seor. Anything that is leaven, this is the time to move it out. And what time is to do that? In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. No leaven shall be found in your houses for 7 days. For whoever eats it, that person, whether he is a proselyte, a convert, or a citizen of the country, shall be cut off from the community of Israel. When are we to remove the leaven from our homes? When? That is interesting. And I am going to clarify it with him with Jewish sources. And I'm going to derive those sources from the Ben Ish Chai Halachot. Take two. Keep. 1, 2, 3. Tishbiyat Yamim Amatzot Tochilu Ach Abadon Harishon. Tashbitu Seor. Mebatechem Ki Cholochel Hameit Wenikreta Hanefesh Haki Mi Yisrael. Amiyom Harishon Ad Yom Hashivi. Obaryom Harishon Mekra Kodesh. Obaryom Hashivi Mekra Kodesh Yichye Lachem Cho Melacha Lo Yaaseh Abahem Ach Asher Ye'akel Alecho Nefesh Hu Lebado Yaaseh Lachem. 7 days you shall eat matzot. On the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats hametz from the first day to the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. You shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day and a sacred occasion on the seventh day. No work shall be done on either of them. Only what every person is to eat, that alone may be prepared. Shemot 12:15 through 16. According to Exodus chapter 12, verses 15 through 16, we are commanded to remove chametz from our homes. It is in the Hebrew tashbitu. We are to remove it from our homes on the first day of the Chag HaMatzot. On the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses, as well as eating matzot on the first day, as stated. 7 days you shall eat matzot, and you shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day. Is this referring to Pesach and Chag HaMatzot are to be observed on the same night? And how do we rid our homes? Well, the laws of checking and eliminating chametz is derived from the Mishnah Pesachim of our oral tradition, and I'm going to relate only Jewish sources because this is the only way to explain the discussion that took place in the clubhouse. On the Mishnah Pesachim, chapter 1, verse 1, on the evening or on the 14th of the month of Nisan, one searches for chametz in his home by candlelight. Any place into which one does not typically take chametz does not require the search, as it is unlikely that there is any chametz there. On the eve of the 14th of Nisan, which fell this year, on our calendar of 5783, and I've noticed in the Sons of Thunder Israelites that they go by a different calendar, and their Passover began on the 2nd or the 3rd, and that is quite interesting too. Now, where were I? Yes. On the eve of the 14th of Nisan, which fell this year, on 5783 on a Tuesday night, one must search for chametz by candlelight. Now, the candle can be made of wax or congeal paraffin oil, or you can use a small flashlight. As long as you search in all the places where the possibility of you and your children or members of your household may have eaten chametz at. In section 1, cited from the Halachot Ben Ish Chai, before the eve of the 14th of Nisan, one must clean chametz out of one's rooms, in all outhouses and courtyards. The ladies of the house must inspect the pockets of garments in case someone put chametz in it, and in them you may find them, and we have a habit and a tendency of doing that, especially some of us adults, because I know I do. Walk around with a candy bar, get it from the store, take a chomp off of it and put it in my pocket, and sometimes forget about it. But even in cases of doubt of that, a proper inspection must be made. And at the beginning of the night of the 14th of Nisan, which is the beginning of the eve of Chag HaMatzot, and that will be proven later. At the beginning of the night of the 14th of Nisan, immediately after nightfall, which is the appearance of 3 stars. This is also interesting to get into about the calculation of our Hebrew day. One must make sure they make a ritual inspection with a candle or a light to ensure that all homes has been removed of hametz. Now there is a custom that I found very interesting in I found it interesting in hearing it from my departed wife's aunt of blessed memory. We visit their home in New York, maybe 2 or 3 days before Pesach, and I noticed something interesting when we was having the discussion of ridding our homes of leaven. She said that she would place it in a room, seal it off, and claim it as ownerless to her. And that is permitted to do. According to halakha, according to Jewish sources, that is permitted to do. And we can have more discussion about that in the comments, or I may highlight that as I go further on.
So when was the commandment for the children of Israel that when they were in Egypt, that the setting of the sun, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their homes for 7 days, at the evening, at the going down of the sun, when they killed the lamb, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their house and have that for 7 days at that period? Where's the commandment for them to do that then? You're saying that they're supposed to start unleavened bread at the same time, that they're supposed to kill the Passover and eat the Passover that night.
This is a retake. Retake part 3. 1, 2, 3.
But you're saying that the 14th day at even starts the 15th day. Well, why is it separate here? So when was the commandment for the children of Israel that when they were in Egypt, that the setting of the sun, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their homes for 7 days at the evening, at the going down of the sun, when they killed the lamb, that they were supposed to remove the leaven out of their house and have that for 7 days at that period. Where's the commandment for them to do that then? You're saying that they're supposed to start unleavened bread at the same time, that they're supposed to kill the Passover and eat the Passover that night. But wait a minute. So it don't make sense.
I'm going to use some clarity. And I hope that he hears me and he listens. Here's the clarity to your questions. In Shemot, Exodus, chapter 12, 15 verses through 16, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leaven from the first day to the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. You shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day, and a sacred occasion on the 7th day. No work at all shall be done on them, only what every person is to eat. That alone may be prepared for you. According to Exodus chapter 12, 15 through 16, we are commanded, 1, to remove what is called in Hebrew tashbitul seor, the sourdough, from our homes. This is to be done on the first day. That's the first mitzvah. The second mitzvah is that we are not to eat any hametz from the first day to the 7th day. Third mitzvah here. We are to eat matzot for 7 days. Now, when is the beginning of the first day to eat matzah? Well, there is a similar discussions taking place here in the Talmud Yerushalmi, part 1 verses 2. Very interesting. And I just recently came across this as I went over and over the discussions in the clubhouse. I came across this one. And it speaks about an argument that is partially referred to the verses that are not quoted in the text of Exodus chapter 12 verses 15, such as 7 days you shall eat matzot. Only on the first day you shall eliminate the sourdough from your houses. No calendar date has been given here. One could read in verses 17 to state that matzot has to be eaten and leavened matter has to be eliminated on the 14th, which is the eve of the 14th, which will be the beginning of the eve of Hagamatzot. Now, it also states this, an impossibility that since some verse or the same verse states that the seventh day is the 21st, I'm going to take that back. It states also in the Talmud Yerushalmi of the possibilities, of the impossibilities. Since the same verse states that the seventh day is the 21st, therefore the obligation to eat matzot starts in the evening preceding the 15th day. Since it is accepted doctrine that the calendar days start at nightfall of the preceding night, the reference to the 14th day cannot possibly refer to eating the matzah, but must be given the date of the elimination of the leavened matter for which the search in the preceding night is a preparation. Here in the Mishnah, Pesachim 1:1, on the evening or of the 14th day of the month of Nisan, one searches for chametz in one's home by candlelight. Any place into which one does not typically take chametz does not require a search, as it is unlikely that there is any chametz there. In the Halachot Ben Ish Chai, section 1, before the eve of the 14th of Nisan, one must clean chametz out of all of the rooms of one's house and outhouses of the courtyards. As it relates, as it states to the women of the household, they are to inspect the pockets of garments in case someone has put chametz in them at some time during the year and did not clean them afterwards. Even in cases of this, if there is doubt, a proper inspection must still be made. At the beginning of the night on the 14th of Nisan, according to the halachot and according to the Talmud and our oral tradition, immediately after nightfall, one must make a ritual inspection. It mentions in the Mishnah we are to use a candle. If one does not have a candle, one can use a small flashlight. But I'm not going to even discuss that. But it's here, and I will provide them. Going further in section 1 of the Ben Ish Chai, it states as soon as possible after Zeta Chukavim, which is the three appearances of small stars in the sky, immediately after nightfall of the 14th day of Nisan, Bedechat HaChametz should be done, which this is the elimination and burning of the chametz. The search for chametz, that's what it is, Bedechat chametz. The search for chametz is made by candlelight, and while doing this, there should be no speaking allowed, except for things that are pertaining to the Bedechat chametz. After the bracha, the blessing that one recites, there is no talking. In section 7 of the Halachot Ben Ish Chai, immediately after the inspection at night, on the 14th of that evening, one must nullify chametz in one's possession which one has missed in the inspection, reciting the formula Chochamira, all leaven, and Delah Hazdite, which have not been seen, Lebatel, it is to be nullified. And shall become or considered as the dust of the earth. This formula is to be said after the inspection has been completed. It is important that one should realize that the word hamira refers both to leaven and leavening foodstuff. One should understand that with the nullification of chametz, one renounces ownership of the chametz, and one no longer has any halakhic claim to it. It is interesting that my departed wife's aunt of blessed memory had this custom. Now, she is not familiar with halakha, and not familiar with the halachot pertaining to ridding the home of leavening agents. She was not familiar with this tradition, this custom. But it amazes me, her having no knowledge of it, she had that custom. She explained to me that many of her chametz that she could not get rid of, and she is not into the knowledge of selling it, but what she couldn't get rid of, she would use a old room. Well, not an old room, sorry, not an old room, but she would use an empty room, and she would store it there, and she would seal it off and release ownership of it. And I found that amazing. Found it amazing. Now we're going to deal with the proper time of ridding the chametz out of the house, as I'm going to go right back to what it states in Shemot chapter 12, 15 through 16. For 7 days you shall eat matzot, and on the very first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. Now, what is the time to do that? Now, in the Talmud, Yerushalmi mentions that there was no calendar date. So, what is the correct time for searching for the chametz? And according to Jewish sources, and namely the Halachot Ben Ish Chai, the proper time for searching for chametz is approximately 23 minutes after sunset. We can compare this to Exodus chapter 12, verses 7, which is the time that the paschal offering is slaughtered, minutes before sunset, as stated. And all of the assembled congregation of the Israelites shall slaughter it at twilight. Bein ha'abayim, which I'm going to get into that too. If one is unable to search at this time, he may still search and recite a barakah even later on during the night. One may not partake of bread or cake more than a kebetza, which is a egg size, which is about approximately 54 grams or something like that, before searching for chametz, starting from a half an hour before the proper time of the search. Now, nevertheless, less than a kebetza of bread or cake, or even more than a kebetza of fruit, vegetables, rice, and the like, may in fact be eaten before performing the search. Sunset this year in New York City is approximately at 7:22 p.m., making the proper time for the search at approximately 7:48. This is what I have jotted down in comparing the minutes time zone regarding the sunset. הראשון ב14 יום לחודש בערב, ותאכלו המצות עד יום האחד. ב20 לחודש בערב, 7 ימים עשהו. לא ימסה בבתיכם כי כל אוכל אך מחמצת, ונקרתן הנפש ההיא עמדת ישראל בגר ובאזרח הארץ. כל ומחמצת לא תאכלו בכל ומושבותיכם ותאכלו המצות. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. Now, I find this very interesting. Do we regard the evening of the 14th day, the beginning of the first day, to eat matzah? And do we count 6 days after that? No leaven shall be found in your houses for 7 days. For whoever eats what is leavened, that person, whether a proselyte or a citizen of the country, shall be cut off from the community of Israel. You shall eat nothing leavened in all your settlements. You shall eat unleavened bread. Shemot chapter 12, 18 through 20. According to Exodus chapter 12, 18 through 20, from the 14th day of the month at evening, we are commanded to eat matzot at the close of the 14th day until the 21st day of the month at the close of its day, which is the eve of the 22nd day, and not the 21st. On the first month from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. If the 14th day at evening, if the 14th day at the time of the slaughtering of the paschal offering at midday is coming to its closing, according to Jewish sources and the Jewish calculation of a day, then in fact that would be the beginning of the first day of the 15th. We can count that. In the Talmud Bavli, Pesachim 28b, verse 11, the Gemara asks, and Rabbi Shimon, from where does he derive the need to establish it as an obligation, even after the destruction of the temple? And what is this obligation? This is the obligation to eat matzah after the destruction of the temple. And after the destruction of the temple, we have what is called a seder that we all participate in performing as a memorial of the paschal offering. So the Gemara answers, he derives it from the following verse. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you shall eat matzot until the 21st day in the evening. Exodus chapter 12, verses 18. This verse connects the obligation to eat matzah to the date of Pesach and not on the paschal lamb. And not only to the paschal lamb. Let me read that over. Rabbi Shimon asks first, where does he derive the need to establish it as an obligation to eat matzah even after the destruction of the temple? And the Gemara gives an answer to Rabbi Shimon. We derive this from this. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, you shall eat matzot until the 21st day in the evening. This verse connects the obligation to eat matzah to the date, which is connecting them. It is connecting Hag HaMatzah with Pesach, and not only to the paschal lamb. Now, he did ask, it appears that these two are to be observed together. And it seems as though they are one. Are they? According to Ellicott's commentary for English readers, his commentary on Exodus chapter 12, verses 18, the evening intended is not that is, hold on, let me get this. The evening intended is not that which the 14th day began, but that with which it is coming to a closing. And the end of the 14th and the beginning of the 15th day. And he make reference in comparison to Leviticus 23, 5, and 6, as the brother in the clubhouse also gave reference to. It must be the go-to scripture for Christians to use. We as Jews already know this. But it must be the go-to scripture for Christians to use. Because there are a few more Christian commentators that I'm going to quote from that goes back to Leviticus 23, 5, and 6, and also to Leviticus 23 as it relates to Yom Kippurim. So what we hear in Ellicott's commentary is that on the eve of the 14th, at sunset, at sundown, is the beginning of the 15th of Hag Hamatzot. I know this is hard to digest and it's hard to accept, but it gets better. Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges states that the seventh day of Exodus chapter 12 verses 15 were to begin with the evening of the day on which the Passover was killed, and to last until the evening of the 21st day. Well, let's go back to 12:15, as it's stated here. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove the leaven from your houses. For whoever eats it from the first day to the seventh day, that person shall be cut off. But this is what he is speaking of. On the eve of the 14th day is the beginning of the eve of Hag Hamatzot, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And this eve of the 14th, as we did just weeks ago, and many others, Israelites, Hebrews, Christians alike, even though most of them have an observance of a different calendar, but they observe the holiday of the Feast of Unleavened Bread on the eve of the 14th. And that is the mitzvah for us to consume a matzah. Still not convincing. Well, eating the matzah on the eve of the 14th, and we are to eat it for 7 days until the 21st of its evening And the calculation of how Jews calculate the day from the first on the eve of the 14th unto the eve of the 21st is the eve of the 22nd. Well, Pulpit's commentary states, the Hebrew day begins with the evening in Genesis chapter 1 verses 5. But the evening here intended is that at the close of the 14th of Abib, which began the 15th. Similarly, the evening of the 21st, which began the eve of the 22nd in Exodus chapter 12 verses 18. בראשון, ב14 יום לחודש בערב, תאכלו מצות עד יום אחד ו20 לחודש בערב. Let's go to Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. As he had stated here, in the first month, the month of Abib or Nisan, the 14th day of the month at evening, ye shall eat unleavened bread, that is, at the evening following the 14th of Nisan, and which was the beginning of the 15th day. The Jews begin their day from the evening. Again, Gill's exposition from of the entire Bible, according to Exodus chapter 12, verses 18, states, from Gill's exposition, in the first month, the month of Abib or Nisan, the 14th day of the month at evening, ye shall eat unleavened bread, that is to say, at the evening following the 14th of Nisan, and which was the beginning of the 15th day. The Jews begin their day from the evening. Hence the Targum Jonathan is on the 14th of Nisan, ye shall slay the Passover on the eve of the 14th of Nisan. In the evening of the 15th, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 20th day of the month at even, which would make just 7 days above the Targum adds. On the evening of the 22nd, you shall eat unleavened bread, which was the evening following the 21st day. This long abstinence from leaven, according to Gill's exposition, denotes that the whole lives of those who are Israelites indeed should be without guile, hypocrisy, malice, and should be spent in serenity and in truth. This is supposed to be the spiritual effect that a Jew exhibits after ridding themselves for this long abstinent period of eating chametz. בחודש הראשון ב14 יום בין הארבעים בפסח להשם. ובחמישה 10 יום לחודש הזה חג המצות להשם 7 ימים המצות תאכלו. והיום הראשון למקרא קודש יהיה לכם לכל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו, והקרבתם אישה להשם 7 ימים ביום השביעי מקרא קודש כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, Bein HaArbayim, the Passover lamb is to be slaughtered. Now, I shouldn't have the I shouldn't I should not be trying to explain what day is, what is night, what is light, what is twilight, what is dawn. I mean, I don't think I should have to define what these words are. But it is good that you all will be looking at slides while I am discussing this and while I'm having this conversation with you all. Baruch Hashem.
Well, all I got to do is read Leviticus chapter 23, and this will prove that the 14th day at evening is not the 15th day, nor is the 9th day at evening the beginning of the 10th day. This is your problem. So this is why y'all count is off. This is why y'all move y'all calendars back every 3 years. Y'all push y'all moon back a whole 30 days, because y'all don't even know how to go through the scriptures and properly show people why y'all do that. So I'm about to show you and help you to clear up all this nonsense. These brothers are lying. The 14th day of evening is not the 15th day. Leviticus 23, the same chapter they go to show you that about unleavened bread. Verse 4, it says, "These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. And the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover." Okay. And then in verse 5 it says, and then verse 6 it says, "And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. And in the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work, no servile work therein, but ye shall offer offering made by fire to the Lord 7 days. But in the 7 days of holy convocation ye shall do no work therein." So how is from verse 6 on down to verse 8 the same as verse 5? When we see that it's clear, bro, it's clear that the 15th day of the first month is the first day of unleavened bread. But you cut yourself when you go to Leviticus 23 and you don't even read the whole chapter. You go straight to Day of Atonement because
Let's read the whole chapter. Before returning back to this discussion, I read Leviticus 23, 6 through 8, and I'm going to read it again. And then I'm going to read it from the beginning of that chapter. בחודש הראשון ב14 לחודש בין הארבעים פסח להשם. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, there should be a Passover offering. This means that the sacrificial lamb is to be offered exactly at Bein Ha'abayim, at twilight. And there should be a Passover offering, and on the 15th day of that month, Hamashim, Asar Yom Lachodesh, Hazeh Chag HaMatzot. LaHashem Shavar Yamyi Matzot Tochelu. And on the 15th day of that month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I'm going to make some comparison, but I'm going to start at the beginning of Leviticus. And I'm going to see if you can see the comparison. So I'm going to start where he started, in verses 4. Ele moad Hashem l'mikrae kodesh, asher tikriu otam b'moadam. These are the set times of sacred occasions, which you shall celebrate each of them at its appointed time. בחודש הראשון ב14 לחודש בין הארבעים פסח להשם, in the first month on the 14th day of the month at twilight, there should be a Passover offering. ובחמישה עשר יום לחודש הזה חג המצות להשם 7 ימים מצות תאכלו. And on the 15th day of that month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Now, he made reference in his comparison to Shemot, chapter 12, Exodus, chapter 12. And so I'm going to do the same thing. Exodus chapter 12, 18. בראשון וארבעה עשר יום לחודש בערב תאכלו המצות עד יום האחד ועשרים לחודש בערב. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. What's going on here? Are we to eat the matzah in the day of the 15th when there's daylight? Or do we observe Hag HaMatzot during the 14th day of the month at evening when it becomes dark, before the Paschal offering that is offered on the 14th day at twilight, before dark? Is this something that the clubhouse is missing? בחודש הראשון ב14 לחודש בין הארבעים פסח להשם. On the first month of the 14th day of the month, at twilight, there should be a Passover offering. בראשון ב14 יום לחודש בערב תאכלו מצות עד יום האחד ועשרים לחודש בערב. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. Here's something else that he made mention in reference to Yom Kippurim. אך בעשור לחודש השביעי הזה יום הכיפורים הוא מקרא קודש יהיה לכם, ועיניתם את נשותיכם והקרבתם אישה להשם. Mark the 10th of this month mark the 10th of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It should be a sacred occasion for you. You should practice self-denial, inflict your soul by fasting, and you should bring an offering by fire for Hashem HaKadosh. וכל מלאכה לא תעשו בעצם היום הזה כי יום כיפורים הוא לכפר עליכם לפני השם אלוהיכם. You should not do any work on that day. What day? The 10th, of course, for it is Yom Kippurim, on which expiation is made on your behalf before Hashem, your God. כי כל הנפש אשר לא תעונה בעצם היום הזה ונכרתה לעמך. Indeed, any person who does not practice self-denial throughout the day of the 10th day, they should be cut off from its kin. And whoever does any work throughout that day of the 10th, I will cause that person to perish from among his people. Do not work whatever. It is a law for all times, throughout your ages, in all your settlements. Now here, 23:32. Shabbat Shabbaton hulechem, u'inetem et nefshotechem, tetish'a ala chodesh ba'erev me'erev ad erev, tishbetu beShabbatkem. It should be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial on the 9th day of that month, the 7th month, at evening. From the evening of the 9th unto the evening of the 10th, from evening to evening, you shall observe this, your Sabbath, your Shabbat. Now, again, as I stated before, I do believe that the clubhouse discussion is not privy to how Jews calculate a day. And as I stated in the beginning, this can only be explained from a Jewish source and from Jewish sources. I don't care. I don't care. They can make it up all they want. It's fine. I don't care. But these things from our Torah and what we have as a Masorah, this stuff have to be explained from Jewish sources. Now, according to what we read, in Leviticus 23:6-8, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, there should be a Passover offering, a Pesach offering to Hashem HaKadosh. And on the 15th day of that month, Hag HaMatzot, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Both of these verses indicate the same time to eat matzah, on the eve of the 14th, as we already read in Shemot 12:18, verses 20. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat matzot until the 21st day of the month at evening, which is the eve of the 14th day, or the closing of the 14th day, when there is only a glimmer of light, is the eve of the 15th, according to Jewish sources and according to Jewish tradition. Through the 21st day, through the evening at sunset, is actually the 22nd day. And I had to note this. From the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat matzot until the 21st day of the month at evening, which is the 22nd day. Is the same as on the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening to evening. That is, the 9th at evening is the 10th of the following day. And the 10th at evening is the following day of the 11th of that same month. Vayikra 23, Leviticus 23:27-32, and comparing this to Devarim or Deuteronomy 16:4, where it states 7 days no hametz shall be found in all your territory, and none of the flesh of what you slaughter on the evening of the first day shall be left until the morning. What first day? The first day of the 15th of Hag HaMatzot? Then that would be the 16th. And this is the reason why all Jews in the diaspora celebrate Pesach twice, on the eve of the 15th day and the eve of the 14th day and the eve of the 15th day. We have two Seder. But yes, this slaughtering was done on the evening of the 14th day. In the Talmud Yerushalmi, there was something interesting, and it's pertaining to this. It is said for the 15th of Pesach, and it is said for the 15th of Sukkot. Since for the 15th, it is said for Pesach, the first night is obligatory to eat matzot, and the remaining days are optional, meaning that you don't have to. Is it a mitzvah for us to eat matzah for 7 days? The only way we can understand this, and I'm going to go through the applications of one of Rabbi Ishmael's hermeneutics of the interpretation of our Torah. And this is something that Hebrew Israelites do not have, is a form of biblical hermeneutics. They don't have it. We do. Christianity does. Even Al-Islam does. But Hebrew Israelites don't follow a hermeneutic interpretation. So, this is what we get. Me taking a 8-minute recording and creating nearly an hour worth of sources. This is what we get. So in the Talmud Yerushalmi Sukkah, chapter 2, part 2, chapter 7, verses 2, it is said for the 15th of Pesach, and it is said for the 15th of Sukkot. Since for the 15th, it is said for Pesach, the first night is obligatory to eat matzot, and the remaining days are optional. Shevad yamim tukal amatzot ubayom hashivi hakal Adonai Allah Hashem. Matzot ye'achel et shevad hayamim velo yira'eh lecha hametz velo yira'eh lecha seor bechol gibor lecha. 7 days you shall eat matzot, and on the 7th day shall be a festival. And throughout the 7 days, the matzot shall be eaten. No hametz shall be found with you, and no hametz shall be found within all of your territory. And this is in Devarim 16:8. No, that was Shemot 13:6, and now I'm going to read Devarim 16:8. ולא יראה לך שאור בכל גבולך או גבולך 7 ימים ולא יעלים מן הבשר אשר תזבח ביום הראשון לבוקר. לא תוכל לצבוע את הפסח באחד שעריך אשר השם אלוהיך נותן לך. כי אם אל המקום אשר יבחר השם אלוהיך לשכן את שמו שם, תזבח את הפסח בערב. חיבור השמש ומועד אסתיך ממצרים. ובישלת ועקת במקום אשר יבחר השם אלוהיך בו, ופנית בבוקר והלכת לאוהליך. 6 ימים תאכל מצות, וביום השביעי עצרת להשם אלוהיך לו, ותעשה מלאכה. I'm going to read the last one. 6 ימים תאכל מצות, וביום השביעי עצרת להשם אלוהיך לו, תעשה מלאכה. Now, I read the entirety of this so I can read in English the severity of what possibly, I only seen one video some years ago that an Israelite had purchased a live lamb and had a goy to slaughter the lamb on his behalf. And it was dedicated for the purpose of a Pesach offering. So, if one does not know the severity of what one is observing, then this is the reason why I brought this entirety here in this discussion. Observe the month of Abib and offer a Pesach sacrifice to your God. For it was in the month of Abib at night that your God freed you from Mitzrayim. You shall slaughter the Pesach sacrifice for your God from the flock and the herd in the place where he will choose to establish his divine name. We already know as Jews, it is the Beit HaMikdash by Yerushalayim. We as Jews know that. It was Solomon's temple. The first temple that he built, and the second temple after the exiles returned to Yerushalayim with Nehemiah and Ezra. And it is the same temple that was destroyed by the Babylonians that sent the first exiles into Babel. And it is the same temple that has been rebuilt where the Romans destroyed it and sent Jews into exile. We no longer make offerings because all of our offerings were to be conducted on the temple. You should not eat anything of hametz with it for 7 days. Therefore, you shall eat matzot. Thereafter, you shall eat matzot, bread of distress or affliction, which is also a part of the Pesach Haggadah. For you departed from the land of Mitzrayim hurriedly, so that you may remember the day of your departure from the land of Mitzrayim as long as you live. For 7 days, no hametz shall be found with you in all your territory, and none of the flesh of what you slaughter on the evening of the first day shall be left until morning. You are not permitted to slaughter the Pesach sacrifice in any of the settlements that your God has given you, not even in those settlements that God exiled you. But at the place where your God will choose to establish his divine name, there alone shall you slaughter the Pesach sacrifice in the evening, at sundown, the time of day when you departed from Mitzrayim. This is in Deuteronomy. You shall cook and eat it at a place that your God will choose. And in the morning, you may start back on your journey home. After 6 days, you shall eat matzot. After 6 days, you should eat matzot. You shall hold a solemn gathering for your God on the 7th day of Hagamatzot. You should do no work. Now note, in the evening at sundown, the time of day is when you departed from Mitzrayim. What time of the day did we leave Mitzrayim? I thought we left at night. Was it the eve of the 15th? The morning of the 16th? Well, here in Rabbi Yishmael's rule reads is this. Anything that was in a set was taken out of the set implies the same for the whole set. Since the last mentioned verse implies that on the 7th day, one needs not eat matzot, one may not eat hametz either. We're not commanded. Well, we are commanded, and it is a mitzvah, to eat matzot for 7 days. However, it mentions in the last, after 6 days of eating matzot, we is to have a holy convocation on the 7th day. Which should be the day of that solemn assembly is when we are to cease eating matzah. But it didn't say that. And not even according to Rabbi Yishmael or Rabbi Yishmael. The same is true for for all 7 days of Pesach. I'm going to read it back. Rabbi Yishmael's rules reads as this. Anything that was in a set and that was taken out of a set implies the same as a whole set. So, since the last mentioned verse implies that on the 7th day one needs not to eat matzot, but one may not eat hametz either, the same rules apply for all 7 days of Pesach, with the only exception is on the first night of Pesach is what we call mitzvah matzot. And it is obligatory to fulfill that obligation of eating matzot on the first night of Pesach, or Hagamatzot, on that night. With the only exception of the first night, of which it is said explicitly in Exodus chapter 12, verses 18, in the evening you shall eat matzot. So also the 15th said for Sukkot, the first night is obligatory and the remaining days of Sukkot are optional. Now, why did I make mention of that, especially with Pesach? That the last days are optional. Well, according to our Mishnah, Pesachim, chapter 10, states that on the eve of Pesach, adjacent to Mecha, a person may not eat until dark, so that he will be able to eat matzot that night with a hearty appetite. Now I go back again. In the evening you shall eat matzot, so also for the 15th said for Sukkot. The first night is obligatory and the remaining days are optional. The colleagues ask the question, since only that one comes to eat matzah with an appetite, according to Mishnah Pesachim, chapter 10, verse 1, as it states, on Pesach Eve, starting close to the afternoon prayers, a person may not eat until nightfall. So he shall eat the first matzah with a good appetite, fulfilled his obligation. But what if he doesn't feel like eating matzah for the remaining 6 days? What if one does not feel like eating matzah? Or what if one has some illness or an allergic reaction? Because many do. It also states in halakha, when a person experience these things or exhibit these things, they are only required to eat either a kazayit of matzah or a betzah of matzah, an olive size or an egg size of matzah. I have also heard in conversations where the type of a flour to use, can I use spelt, can I use this, all a part of the 5 grains. And of course you can't, because most people are allergic to wheat. And so I believe personally, and it's quite debatable, we can put it in the comment, this is the reason why Hashem HaKadosh inserted. Now, why the appetite is mentioned and why Sukkot is mentioned? Well, it is a mitzvah for us to dwell in the sukkah and to eat our meals there and to sleep there. On cold and windy nights, we're not obligated to sleep in it. Nor, if one is not hungry, he's not obligated to eat in the sukkah. If he's not hungry, he's not going to eat in the sukkah. It's optional because I'm not hungry. But it is a mitzvah to eat any of the 5 grains in the sukkah. And we don't eat in the sukkah on the 8th day of Sukkot. This is why it mentioned a good appetite. Even though there is no similar rule spelled out for the Sukkot, Rabbi Yohanan argues that homiletic, the argument is homiletic but cannot be legal. So also here, only they come to eat in the sukkah with an appetite. Rabbi Zeira asks the question, since there's only one has to eat matzah in the volume of an olive, so also here only one has to eat grain in the sukkah in the volume of an olive. Bamidbar 9, chapter 9, verses 1 through 6. Wadaber Hashem el Moshe, Bamidbar Sinai, Abashana HaShenit, Lesetan, Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Abachodesh HaRishon, Lemor. Hashem HaKadosh spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu in the wilderness of Sinai on the first new moon of the 2nd year following the exodus from the land of Mitzrayim, saying, Wayasu bnei Yisrael et hapasach b'moado. Be'aba'ar asa yom b'chodesh hazeh ben ha'abayim ata'asu oto b'moado. Chechol hokotah v'chechol mishpatah ata'asu oto. Let the children of Israel, after the Passover sacrifice, let the children of Israel offer the Passover sacrifice at its set time. You shall offer it on the 14th day of this month at twilight, as its set time. You shall offer it in accordance with all its rules and rites. Moshe Rabbeinu instructed the children of Israel to offer the Passover sacrifice, and they offered the Passover sacrifice in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, in the wilderness of Sinai. Just as Hashem HaKadosh had commanded Moshe Rabbeinu, so the children of Israel did. Bamidbar, chapter 9, 1 through 6. According to Numbers 9, 1 through 6, and Leviticus 23, 6 and 8 confirms that Pesach offering is to be slaughtered at twilight, ben ha'arbayim, at twilight. And if one does not know how to distinguish twilight, it is a soft glowing light from the sky when the sun is below the horizon, and it causes a refraction of scattering sun rays from the atmosphere. Yes, I'm reading this from Wikipedia. You should offer it on the 14th day of this month at twilight, at its set time, Moadeh. Numbers chapter 9, verses 6. On the 14th day of the month at twilight, there should be a Pesach sacrifice, Leviticus 23, 6. What time is the Passover sacrifice? What time do we slaughter it? You slaughter it at twilight on the 14th day of the month of Abib, as stated. When does one eat matzah? On the 14th night, which starts its eve of Hagamatzot. When you shall keep watch over it until the 14th day of this month, and all the assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight, in Shemot chapter 12, verse 6. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, there should be a Passover offering, Wayikra, Leviticus 23, 5. And in the 14th day of this month at twilight, at its set time, you shall offer it in accordance with all the rules and rites. And they offered the Passover sacrifice in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight, in the wilderness of Sinai. Numbers chapter 9, verses 3 through 5. And they shall offer it in the second month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and they shall not leave any of it over until morning. They shall not break a bone of it. They shall offer it in strict accordance with the law of the Passover sacrifice. Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 9, verses 11 and 12. And in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, there shall be a Passover sacrifice. And on the 15th day of that month, a festival, unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. Bamidbar 28:16 through 17 of Numbers. Now, I'm going to read some commentaries, but the first two commentaries are going to come from Jewish sources as pertaining to what I just read. What time is the Passover sacrifice? And according to Rabbeinu Bachya, as he states, that the word ben ha'abarim, which usually appear in connection with Pesach offering, are missing here in the verse and chapter of Numbers 28:16. You shall keep watch over it until the 14th day of this month, and all the assembled congregation of Yisrael shall slaughter it at twilight, ben ha'arbayim. And in Shemot 12:6, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, there shall be a Passover sacrifice, and on the 15th day of that month, a festival, unleavened bread, shall be eaten for 7 days. Numbers 28:16. What is Rabbeinu Bachya is saying here? And what is he sharing here? Well, Ben Ha'abadim is always associated with Korban Pesach. That's what he pointed out. Even confirming that from the various verses that I just read above. In the Mishnah Torah, Leavened and Unleavened Bread, chapter 1, verses 8 through 9, the Rambam, it is forbidden to eat hametz on the day of the 14th of Nisan from noon onward, from the beginning of the 7th hour of the day. Now we're going into a discussion of how Jews calculate our days.